This short video will tell you everything you need to know about GDPR. In this session, we'll cover what is GDPR and what is the impact of those regulations. We'll also have a look at how this applies to you and what we need to do. We'll consider some of the actions and give you contact details if you require more information. So let's start with what is GDPR. This is directly applicable to all EU member states and came into force on the 25th of May 2018. GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulations, and this applies to QB's operations in the UK, Ireland and France, as well as to our activities in other EU member states. The GDPR will be incorporated into UK domestic law by the Data Protection Bill, and this stands regardless of the outcome of the negotiations concerning Brexit. An individual has a fundamental right to have their personal data protected, and their personal data may only be processed under certain circumstances. And under process we mean obtained, recorded, held, used or disclosed. The aim of the General Data Protection Regulations is to ensure good information handling practice, and the requirements for compliance are much more stringent than under existing rules, and the penalties for failure to comply are much more severe. As previously mentioned, GDPR relates to personal data, and this means any data relating to a living individual who can be identified from the data. Our group must be able to demonstrate compliance by showing the supervisory body, which is the Information Commissioner's Office in the UK, evidence of internal policies and controls, implementation of those policies, effective internal compliance measures and external controls. Failure to demonstrate compliance can result in a fine of €20 million or 4% of the group turnover, and we must show an organisational culture that encourages compliance. So let's have a look at how this applies to you. We'll all receive personal data in the course of our jobs, and this could include personal data concerning our teams. So for example, we might have copies of their CV or applications for the role. We might have their personal contact details and the date of birth. We may also have personal data concerning our business contacts. So for example, phone numbers and email addresses. And we might also have personal data concerning our consumers who contact QB. So what do we need to do? From the 25th of May, we must have reviewed existing procedures, so we need to consider on what basis are we currently processing data and what consent do we have. We need to have a written map GDPR register showing where and how we process data and on what basis. We must be able to demonstrate consent and ensure individuals can withdraw consent at any time. We must have updated privacy policies, so we may have different policies for different activities. We must be able to respond quickly to a data subject request. That is, an individual can request for a copy of all the data held on them, or they may even ask for all the personal data held to be erased. We must be able to notify supervisory authorities within 72 hours of a data breach. And we must have a written information security programme protecting security, confidentiality and integrity of personal data. Here are some actions that will help you to comply with GDPR. You need to review your data collection procedures. So ask yourself, do we need to hold all of these categories of data? And if not, we should remove them from our data collection process. You should only store data centrally on the approved IT system, so no personal data should be stored locally. You should avoid producing paper copies of personal data, and if necessary, then you need to ensure that they are kept securely and destroyed as soon as possible. Paper copies should not be taken outside or off the QB premises and should be disposed of in confidential waste. If you have personal data visible on your screen, then you need to lock your screen before you step away from it. If personal data is being shared within the business, then share the minimum data necessary and consider if the data can be anonymised or aggregated. And for personal data received in connection with a consumer complaint, this data should be stored securely for a period of 6 years from the date of the complaint. It should then be destroyed. There are some actions that relate to policies and processes. You need to review your existing policies and processes within the team to ensure that they reflect GDPR requirements, and any new policies, procedures or activities that you are planning should reflect privacy by design, with GDPR being a principal driver in how that policy or procedure is designed and developed. There are some actions that relate to the information or the team data that we hold on our current team. All teams within QB may find that they receive personal data about members of their team or potential new members of their team. The QB HR team are responsible for managing the processing, holding and control of this data, but each team is responsible for its own compliance. When we consider the information we hold on team members, we need to think about the information such as training records, appraisals and disciplinary issues, for example, that regard our team members should be kept centrally by HR. We should remember not to keep hard copies of documents containing personal data, and we also need to remember not to store personal data regarding your team locally on your own computer. There are more actions to consider when you're dealing with recruitment. If you receive CVs or application forms from HR, these should be retained only for so long as the recruitment for that role is underway, and they then must be deleted immediately. If you receive direct approaches from individuals and you wish to engage with that individual, please provide a copy of the CV to HR. If you do not wish to engage with that person, please delete the CV once you have determined they are not of interest, and in any event within 3 months of receipt. Hard copies of CVs and application forms should be kept securely, so they should not be left on top of desks, and they need to be disposed of in the confidential waste bins as soon as the recruitment for that role has been completed. There are actions related to our professional contacts. We all hold personal data, so for example names, telephone numbers and email addresses, about our contacts at other businesses, so for example customers, suppliers, professional advisors, etc. We must remember that this data is also subject to GDPR. If we have received this data from the individual by way of receiving emails from them with their email signature on, or if we receive their business card, or if they complete the account forms, we can assume that they have consented to us holding and processing their data. We must, however, keep their information secure, and this means not keeping hard copies of the data and treating it securely. Think twice as to whether their information needs to be included in documents that you are circulating. And finally, we can only use that data for the purpose that it was provided to us. So this means that in general, we cannot use it for marketing purposes. If you do wish to market to these individuals, you should discuss this with the legal team. Who to contact for more information? If you have any questions or you would like more information, you should contact your line manager in the first instance, or you could contact your HR business partners, Lauren and Philippa, and they can be contacted on the emails below. Thank you for watching the session on GDPR.